What's going on? We are filming this on September 15th. Some of you may know it as National Doodle Day. Feel free to get a pencil and pen out, get a nice little stick person going. It's also National Double Cheeseburger Day. Make sure you go enjoy one of those. I love me a good double cheeseburger. But most importantly for all of us, it is the day after a terrific Thursday night football game between the Eagles and the Vikings. It was a sloppy game, but it was a fun game to watch nonetheless. So the Eagles improved to 2-0, knocking off the Vikings by a score of 34-28. Vikings fall to 0-2. It was a pretty interesting game. The Vikings struggled with turnovers throughout. Alexander Madison had a real issue taking control of the ball, keeping control of the ball, I should say. The Vikings special teams had some blunders on some returns, and it was overall kind of an ugly game for the Vikings. Yeah, with that said, they still managed to find a way to put 28 points on the board. And the offense, despite their fumbling issues, still played well. I thought Kirk Cousins played exceptionally well. He was 31 of 44 for 364 yards and four touchdowns. A lot of people like to kind of crap on Kirk Cousins anytime the Vikings lose, but I don't think this was really his fault. I thought he played really good, clean football. At the end of the day, I think the biggest issue here was how the Vikings defense played. Running down the numbers for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts was 18 of 23 for 193 passing yards with a passing touchdown, as well as one interception. But he also had 35 rushing yards and two rushing touchdowns. Uh, DeAndre Swift on the ground, 28 carries, 175 yards, as well as a rushing touchdown there. That was really the story of the game. Uh, the Eagles just pounded the rock on the ground, and the Vikings could not do anything to stop them. Uh, Swift played a fantastic game. If you're a fantasy owner of DeAndre Swift, you have to be ecstatic from what you saw and hope that production continues throughout the rest of the year. Uh, Another guy you got to be real happy for if you're an Eagles fan would be Devonta Smith. He had four catches for 131 yards and one touchdown. One of those was on a busted coverage play. And then the other big story on offense was A.J. Brown had four catches for 29 yards, and there was kind of a little spat going on the sideline between him and Jalen Hurts. It looked like A.J. Brown was a little bit discontent with his role in the offense for that game. And I'm not going to completely raise a red flag yet on that, but I'm certainly going to raise at least an orange flag because it's kind of concerning that, you're having your way with the game on the ground the way the Eagles did. I mean, holes were openings throughout, and anywhere they wanted to run it they could, whether it was the left side, the right side, up the middle. They were really making it look easy. And for AJ Brown to kind of not take a back seat on that and realize how well the running game was working and accept that he was going to have a little bit of a lesser game is kind of concerning to me. I'm hoping it's going to be a non-story from here on out, but it's definitely something we do have to keep our eye on and go from there. Flipping back over to the Vikings side, Justin Jefferson had another good game, had 11 catches for 159 yards. TJ Hawkinson finally got a little bit more of a groove going after week one. He had seven catches, 66 yards, and two touchdowns. And then the rookie Jordan Addison, three catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. I think he's been looking exceptionally well. That's a guy you probably want to continue to invest in fantasy as well, is Addison. But if you're the Vikings, you got to take a long look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what's going to happen with this season. You're now 0-2. You lost week one to a not very good Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. You played pretty ugly football against the Eagles this week. A lot of turnovers. The defense just didn't really have many answers besides Danielle Hunter, who had three sacks. He's got four on the year already, so huge props up to him on that. But you look at the rest of the NFC North. Teams like the Packers, who have a great running attack with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. You look at the Bears, they can't pass the ball, period. They're going to rely a lot on the ground, especially with Justin Fields. And then lastly, you have the Detroit Lions. They have a hard-nosed style of football. Jahmyr Gibbs was a first-round pick. David Montgomery played really well week one against the Chiefs. You're going to have to figure out how to stop the football if you want to win some football games. The way the Eagles dominated that time of possession with the run game just basically took out all the steam and momentum Minnesota could try to develop. They'd have a nice scoring drive. Cousins really threw the ball well on that drive, and you'd think they'd be getting a little bit of momentum back, and then the Eagles would have a 9 minute possession that would just take all that momentum back because they couldn't get a stop in the run game. It's a really tough thing for Minnesota. And then you look up at their upcoming schedule. They're at home against the Chargers, then they're at Carolina, at home against the Chiefs, and then at Chicago. That's a tough schedule coming up. The Chargers are, a really competent football team. I'll talk about them a little bit later in the show, but that's going to be another tough game that could be making them look at potentially 0-3. Carolina should be a game that they can get done, but considering they didn't get it done against Tampa, that's another one that you kind of have some question marks about. And then there's the Chiefs. The Chiefs are always consistently one of the toughest teams in the league. Um, that could be an 0-5 start, and at that point, there's a lot of things going wrong in Minnesota if you're going 0-5. I believe Kirk Cousins is a free agent at the end of the year. You're going to have to decide if you re-sign him, if you let him walk, maybe you trade him, depending where you can find a fit there. But they don't really have a backup plan at quarterback within their own roster. Um, so that could be a bit of a concern. And then as you have guys such as Daniil Hunter and Harrison Smith who are starting to get up there in age, you maybe look at moving them and see if you can get any sort of asset, especially if you think you're going to have to enter that rebuilding period. Um, the only thing that is a little bit hesitant, if you're a Viking fan, on that hitting that rebuild button is probably that the NFC North is still relatively wide open. Um, the Lions and the Packers did look relatively good in Week 1, but it's a long season, and we know what type of quarterback Jared Goff usually is, and we're not sure what type of quarterback he'll be through the majority of the season. Jordan Love still has a lot to prove, and beating up the Bears, who were the worst team in football last year, doesn't really necessarily prove a bunch. I just, I don't know. I have a lot of questions if I'm the Vikings, and I'm not sure how I'm going to answer those questions here in the immediate future. But they got to be real careful these next couple games to avoid an absolute free fall for the rest of the season. Meanwhile, for Philadelphia, they're on the road against Tampa Bay next week, following at home against Washington, and then, excuse me, at home against Washington, I should say, and then at the Rams and at the Jets. Tampa should be a relatively easy game. The Commanders' offense has not really it's going to take a game or two to get flowing. That might not be the best matchup for them, for the Commanders, that is. And then, the Rams and the Jets kind of have some of their own problems to figure out. The Rams have a lot of injuries on their hands as they are trying to be better than last year. And of course, the Jets just lost Aaron Rodgers. The Eagles should be well on track to starting the season off very hot again, like they did last year. Um, so moving on, as much as we love Thursday night football, there's nothing we quite like more than weekend football. One game is great, 300 games is even better. So we're just going to move on to this weekend's play, some of my best bets for this weekend. I'm going to touch on a little bit of those as I go, and I will also pop all of these up on the screen here at the end of the video after I finish touching on all these. The first play that I really like this weekend is Illinois plus 14.5 against Penn State. I think Illinois' quarterback Luke Altmaier is really going to have to take possession of this game. He's been a dual threat so far through 2 games, leading the team in rushing both games, as well as having a decent arm and passing well. He's going to have to control the tempo and really take control, I think, on the ground to kind of steal this time and momentum from Penn State. For Penn State, their quarterback Drew Aller has looked fantastic. He's looked really sharp. And I think you need to try to keep the ball out of his hands. And Illinois, they're usually a well coached football team. They lost last week to Kansas. Brett Bielema has experience coaching in the Big Ten. He knows how to run the football. He knows how to have a good offensive line, how to have a good defensive line. I think he's going to be able to maybe not necessarily go beat Penn State, but I think he's going to be able to make it a competitive, hard football game. That's why I like Illinois plus 14.5. All of these lines, by the way, were the lines posted on just ESPN's little score bug on there. So they could have updated and changed by now. I'd play these all within a point, give or take. You have to make your own decision and bet responsibly here. These are just the ones that I like. Moving on, the other one I really like here is Washington minus 15.5. I think a lot of people are probably going to like this one. I think the line might continue to grow. On paper, it looks like it should be a great offensive versus defensive game. Michigan State's only allowing 107 passing yards per game, but I mean, Michigan State also hasn't played anyone that great so far this season. Part of the reason why they're 2-0, and then we look at what's going on off the field with Mel Tucker and the scandal going on there. He's probably going to lose his job as the head coach in Michigan State. I know D'Antoni is there to try to kind of right the ship for the rest of the season. It's just, I think it's going to be a real tough week for this matchup with everything going on to go out there and play a good week of football. When you go look at that Washington offense, Michael Penix Jr. is a legitimate Heisman contender, as well as a legitimate NFL quarterback. His arm as well as his feet are great, and then he's got two very explosive wide receivers on the outside of him with Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. Those two guys can take any catch they get straight to the house. It's really explosive offense, and I can expect them to kind of roll over Michigan State here and uh, continue their success over in Washington. And quickly, I just want to note that it looks like early on through 2 or 3 weeks, the Pac-12 could arguably be the best conference in football this year again. USC's offenses looked very, very good. Utah's obviously another great team. Colorado and Deion Sanders have the boys playing well. You have Washington, you have Oregon. They have a lot of good teams out in that conference this year. It's going to be fun to continue to see how that conference plays out and see if they can make a last hurrah in the playoff before that conference looks to fold with everyone realigning. And then my last play I have on Saturday for college football is BYU money line against Arkansas. They will be on the road, but I think that's something that BYU thrives on. They really like going to other people's place and pulling the upset. And I'm looking to see that again. This will be, I think, a very fun game to watch. It has two of the most experienced quarterbacks in all of college football this year, Keaton Slovis at BYU and KJ Jefferson over on Arkansas. This will be BYU's first year in the Big 12, so I think their roster is a little bit more complete than it has been in years past, which is saying something considering BYU is consistently a very solid football team year in and year out. And, so far through 2 games, I've thought Slovis has passed my eye test of comfortability in the offense. Um, Sometimes he's not the world's best quarterback, but this year so far, he at least looks comfortable and what they expect him to do, and I think that will help him go a long way this season. But most importantly, they need the BYU defense is the key to winning this game. KJ Jefferson, he's excelled in not turning over the ball throughout his entire career. Has great touchdown to interception numbers. But BYU's defense has already had 4 interceptions so far this season, and they're going to have to increase that number and make Jefferson turn the ball over if they want to get this victory. But I think it's something that they can definitely do. I'm not super sold on Arkansas. I thought they looked a little bit shaky in week 1. They figured it out a little bit more in week 2. BYU also had a tough week 1. This should be a good game. I'm going with the Cougars on this one. And then jumping over to Sunday's slate with the NFL, starting off, I got the Chargers -3. This one's just really, really simple. I don't have a ton to say on this. Uh, Tennessee's success for everything they do starts and ends with the run game. Obviously, Derrick Henry is the most crucial member of that team. And when they can't run the ball, they really struggle to get things going. Tannehill's not a bad option at quarterback, but he doesn't really have that many weapons outside of him. And the Chargers defense really defends the ball well. Meanwhile, the Chargers offense, it can really do a lot of different things, whether that be running the football or passing the football. But when you have Justin Herbert as well as the weapons they have, such as Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, they're just going to be able to pass all over this Titans defense that does not defend the pass very well. Last week against the Saints, they allowed 282 passing yards to Derek Carr in his Saints debut, and I expect Herbert to put up bigger numbers than that as the Chargers take care of this one pretty comfortably, honestly. Another game that I think seems a little bit maybe bait potentially to say is the Cowboys -8.5. I did see this one a little bit earlier at -9, but this seems like a game in which the Jets don't have anything they can do. The Giants' defense was just absolutely a monster against the Giants, and they ate up that Giants' offensive line. Meanwhile, we saw the Jets' offensive line be very shaky against the Bills, and it's what led to Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. Um, I just expect this I expect this Cowboys defensive line to just have a very, very strong week again, absolutely demolishing that Jets offensive line. And, Zach Wilson was very shaky last year. We saw a lot of rotation in that Jets quarterback room between him and Mike White, and I believe Joe Flacco had a few starts in there as well. He's going to have to take care of the ball. And when you're going up against defensive backs such as Travion Diggs and Stephon Gilmore, that's a tough thing to do anyway. Um, I think the Cowboys really should take care of this one pretty easily. I don't expect the Jets to be able to get anything going at all on offense in the entirety of this game. Another one I have going on Saturday is the Commanders plus 3.5. They're playing against the Broncos in this game, and on the surface of week one, Russ did look better than he did last season. I think Sean Payton has made his job a little bit easier at times already so far this year. The numbers might not reflect that, but just the expectation and kind of schemes made it look easier for Russ. But with that said, he really struggled to get his most explosive weapons involved. Cortland Sutton didn't really have a good game. Most of his passing yards were to running backs and tight ends. And that's not how you're going to be able to get it done against this Commanders team. The Commanders' offense isn't super explosive. They kind of struggled against the Cardinals a little bit week one, but I just favor the defense in this type of matchup. The Broncos O line is very shaky, and that's always going to be an issue in the NFL when you can't protect, especially when you go up against a defensive line like the Commanders. Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. I believe I read Chase Sweat will be making his debut this week. When you have those guys rushing the passer, it's going to be tough to keep your quarterback clean, and I think Russ is going to get hit several times. For the Commanders, though, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how they deal with Patrick Surtain, who's certainly going to be matched up on Terry McLaurin, their number one receiver. He will more than likely be able to take McLaurin out of that game. Surtain's been fantastic so far in his NFL career. But I still think I just trust the Commanders a little bit more to get this one done. Sam Howell wasn't terrible, but he wasn't necessarily great either. He looked just average, and I think another average game could be enough to get this one done here for the Commanders. And then my last pick coming on Monday night will be the Browns minus 2.5. I'm probably committing a football sin here, picking against the Steelers at home. I'm sorry if I'm disrespecting Mike Tomlin, but this is a different Pittsburgh team than all the ones Tomlin's had in the past that has helped them that great record at home and made his record so dominant over his time in Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger is gone. Almost all the veterans he's had defensively and offensively are gone. It's a very new look team, and I don't have a ton of faith in them right now. Pickett looked really good in the preseason, but looked really bad week one, and I understand playing a tough 49ers defense will do that to you, but I still just have some overall concerns about what we'll be able to see from him. He didn't really seem comfortable throwing the football. I know he had a perfect passing rating in the preseason, but he seemed not to have the accuracy on point week one. And most importantly, that Steelers defense, they lost Cam Hayward for the season. He's been placed on the IR, and that's going to be a huge blow to a Steelers defense that gave up 152 yards on the ground to Christian McCaffrey last week. They're going to have the same type of challenge facing Nick Chubb this week. Chubb is an explosive running back, a hard-nosed running back, and they're definitely going to feed him a lot. And not only will Cam Hayward be out, but on the offensive side for Pittsburgh, I've seen Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth are questionable to play. Without those two guys on the outside, as well as no Hayward, I just think those are too big of holes for Pittsburgh to be able to fill going into this week. The Browns' offense, Deshaun Watson, he came back last year, didn't look like the best quarterback we've seen in his career. Certainly missing a lot of time due to off the field problems will do that to you. He's now, had the off season, had the preseason. I think he's finally getting more, adjusted to playing the game again. I thought he looked pretty good week one. I think he's finally starting to get everything figured out, and I'm going to ride with him in the Browns minus 2.5 on Monday. So those were my picks for this weekend. Make sure to Let me know what you think of those. Let me know what some of your guys' personal favorite bets this weekend are. I'll be tracking these every week, and we'll keep following my record, and you guys can kind of start deciding if you think that you should trust my picks or not trust my picks. Hopefully, I'm doing you guys a service and getting you some good plays out there. Uh, so, last thing we got for today is we're going to talk about the Noche UFC event on Saturday night. It is a show for the Mexican independence. As we have a lot of Hispanic representation on this card. I know when I was looking through the fun holidays for today, I saw that a lot of Central and South Americans' Independence Days were today, including Guatemala and I believe El Salvador, one of those I saw. So I think it's really cool that the UFC is taking time to try to honor this, uh, with their event and even headlining it on free TV with a big title fight. And that title fight is Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko, the rematch. Valentina Shevchenko has been a dominant champion for a long, long time, but she got caught. That's really what it comes down to. She threw a little bit wild stuff, a spinning elbow, maybe a spinning back fist. I'm not sure exactly what she was trying to land, but she ended up, getting her back taken by Grasso when she went for that spin. And next thing you know, she was tapping out to a rear naked choke. And that's kind of a Grasso special. Dating back to 2020, she's on a 5 fight winning streak and has had two rear naked choke finishes. So it's definitely her game to get you on the ground and choke you out. And I think that's what she's going to have to do again if she wants to beat Shevchenko. I think Valentina's definitely looked a little bit less on the ground of her last two matchups. I'm not going to say it's been a weakness. It's never, there's nothing Valentina Shevchenko has that is considered a weakness. She's definitely one of the most well rounded women martial artists of all time. But when you look at this last fight with Alexa Grasso, as well as her fight with Talia Santos, her takedown defense, as well as her ability to get back up on the feet, looked shaky a little bit at times. And, that's definitely something that Grasso can take advantage of if she's going to want to win this fight. And then the other thing I want to just kind of mention that I think will play a huge part in this fight is Alexa Grasso actually trains down in Mexico at elevation. I believe it was at 5,100 feet. Meanwhile, Valentina Shevchenko mainly trains at Tiger Muay Thai, who are known for their unique abilities of athleticism, I'll say. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do with that um, as that fight will go on. It's a really tough one to call. I could see it really going either way. Diego Lopez, the jiu-jitsu coach for Alexa Grasso, has recently worked his way into the UFC and has been a super exciting fighter. And just watching the connection those two have, especially as he continues to grow her jiu-jitsu game, it's going to be interesting. But I'm probably going to lean Shevchenko on this one. The Bullet has always been a pretty dominant champion, and I'm not sure if her time is up yet. She is 35. She is getting a little bit older. She's got a plethora of experience. Has been fighting for a long time, but I still think that she could be able to get this one done. Meanwhile, in the co-main event, my personal most excited fight of the night will be Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena. Um, I'm really torn on this one. I don't know what to expect. Now, I'm not really sure what the plan of this fight was. Usually, when you have a hot prospect like Jack Della Maddalena, you slowly try to build him up the rankings. And this Kevin Holland matchup is an interesting one, as I'm really expecting. I just I consider both of them guys that are on the rise that are looking to get to their own title shot. And I'm just kind of surprised that they had them cross paths already. Um, for Holland, I know he's talked a lot about wanting to go back to 185. He's not a big fan of the 170 weight cut, but he's been a lot more successful at 170 than 185. But he still has some of that 185 size, which I think will definitely play a huge factor in this fight. When you look at Jack Della Maddalena's last fight against Hafez, he was a little bit of a more stocky, sturdier guy compared to Jack Della Maddalena. He struggled with that, especially in the wrestling aspect. I'm not going to dismiss the fact that Jack Della Maddalena had two weight cuts due to a opponent pullout, so that could be part of the reason that his cardio looked a little worse. But still, the size was definitely a huge factor in that fight, and I think it's going to be one in this fight. I expect a lot of high level striking between this. Jack Della Maddalena, albeit has not had the greatest competition so far in his UFC career, but that's going to happen as you continue to work up. So these numbers will be a little bit inflated, but he is landing 7.27 significant strikes per minute with a 52% accuracy on that. While Holland, he dodges about 52% of his opponent's shot. It's usually only landing about 2 to 3 per minute, 2.96 if you want the exact number. And if you want to flip those on that, Holland usually lands about 4.11 significant strikes per minute with 52% accuracy, while Jack Dalla Maddalena thus far has dodged 69% of his opponent's incoming offense, taking only 3.5 significant strikes per minute. So the really telling number to me thus far on that is that Jack's defense has been very good, managing to make his opponent miss 69% of the time. It's a real nice number to work with there. And if he can show that level of head movement to make sure Holland can't land his big shots, I think he can take this fight. But Holland's a little bit more of that dog type mentality where he's not afraid to bite down on the mouthpiece and make it an ugly fight. He'll definitely be more than happy to go get into a tight situation, throw some clinch elbows, some knees. I think he's pretty comfortable in the clinch, and we've actually seen him finish a high number of fights with submissions after getting his opponents hurt. So my picks for this weekend first, we're going to start with two things we're going to do every single week from here on out when it comes to our UFC plays. The first will be the PP, the Poppy Parlay. Poppy is a good friend of mine that you will see on this channel time in and time out talking UFC with me. Every week he was going to be submitting a three-leg parlay for you guys. This week's parlay will be Roman Kopylov, Raul Rosas Jr., and Valentina Shevchenko. That comes out to plus 131 overall on the parlay. I think that's a relatively safe parlay. I like it. Kopylov is going to be taking on Josh Fremd, who has had an okay UFC run so far, but Kopylov's a pretty big favorite on that one. Raul Rosas is taking on Terrence Missile. He's still, I believe, the youngest fighter within the UFC, and then obviously Valentina Shevchenko. And then my plays I will have will be called the Big Ticket in honor of my guy, Kevin Garnett, the greatest player in my favorite franchise's history, the Minnesota Timberwolves. These will just be some props to watch out, and hopefully it will allow you to cash a big ticket. The first I have is Holland by sub at plus 600. Like I mentioned at the tail end of my co-main event coverage, Holland's done a great job of, grabbing people's necks, whether that be a Darce, an Anaconda. Whenever he has guys hurt, he was able to get one on Michael Chiesa, and he's just been real slick with that. I think if he can rock Jack Dalla Maddalena, there's a good chance that he can slide something in there to get the submission. I think that number is a good one on that. The other one I have is Valentina Shevchenko by submission. This one is just kind of due to Valentina's own pride. Oftentimes, when it comes into fights, when they are trying to sell the chances of her opponents, they often try to take a specific trait of her opponent and highlight it. And a lot of times, Shevchenko will look to take that trait and embarrass that person with them. When she fought Andrade, a lot of people talked about Andrade's grappling and her power in terms of pure strength. And Valentina just took her down and really made it look like she was the top better on the ground there. And I think that's what she's going to attempt to do in this fight as well. I think that a lot of people are talking about the jiu-jitsu game of Grasso, as well as the fact that she made Valentina submit in the first time out. So I think Valentina certainly has the pride that she's going to go out there and try to get a submission against Grasso to prove a point. And then the last one I have, I got this one off FanDuel, is Lupe Godinez by KO or submission plus 145. Um, at the end of the day, this one just comes down more to not so much being high on Lupe Godinez as much as it is being low on Elise Reed. I'm not super big fan of Elise Reed. I don't think she's super talented. Lupe Godinez has shown the ability to get things done on the ground with some ground and pound as well as some submissions. And, Elise Reed's been finished on the ground 3 times, one by TKO and 2 by submission, I believe it was. I just think that Godinez has the type of offense to get the finish in which that Elise Reed usually struggles. So those are my three plays I had going for the big weekend, or excuse me, this big weekend, the big tickets. I'm excited for this. I don't know how much I'll be able to catch this week as the Huskers play at 6 o'clock against Northern Illinois. I will be at that game. I'll try to get some video that I can slide in here onto Monday's video. Um, I'm excited for Saturday as a whole. My Manchester United Red Devils play Brighton Hove Albion in what will be a very exciting Premier League game. I'll be trying to catch a little bit more Prem games this weekend to start my Saturday and Sunday mornings, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that on Monday as well as recapping this weekend's slate for the NFL as well as some college football games, and then give you a preview for Monday Night Football. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you leave a comment below what you guys are doing this weekend. Who are some of your favorite plays? What games are you excited for? And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And remember, bet responsibly, go Big Red.